And we stay with the Heritage Celebrations theme and look at heritage and African spirituality. Joining us now is the founder and leader of the Revelation Spiritual Home, Imboni, Dr. UzwiLezwe Radebe. Dr. Radebe is also an author, seer and spiritual guide who advocates for restoration of African Indigenous spirituality. Good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. Happy Heritage Day to you. Let's start by you briefly telling us what we mean when we talk about African spirituality.
Good evening to your viewers as well. African Indigenous Spirituality, it is the spiritual practices of African people from the beginning. As we all know that life began in Africa. And when humans were created together with our spiritual connection, spiritual practices, and spiritual ways. So in essence, that is what African spirituality is. It's who we are in the spiritual context.
Is it separate from, culture as well? Do we only look at the spiritual aspect of it?
Yeah, as I said, that when humans were created with our spirituality.
Yeah.
So when you talk about culture, including traditions, they actually emerge from our spirituality. It's spirituality that gave birth to who we are, our identity, our cultures, including our own traditions. So you cannot separate those with our spirituality. So
one then would ask, for example, that if we talk about culture and we talk about spirituality, what does it all, encompass, especially for someone who says that I practice African spirituality? For them, what does it mean on a day-to-day basis that they do?
I always make this example that humans, we are both physical and you are both spiritual. So if you talk day-to-day physical, you have to eat, feed yourself, you have to wash, you have to do all those things, including your spirituality. It's the communication with your own spiritual guides. Because as humans, there's hierarchy. There are bosses at work, there are government, there are law enforcement. In spirituality as well, there's hierarchy. You have your own guides, you have your own ancestors, you have your spiritual guides, what we call is the tool. It is that daily communication with them. It is seeking wisdom from them, seeking guidance from them, acknowledging them. They speak through you, through dreams, etc. So when you talk about your day-to-day, it's more of that communication that you do with your spiritual guides and spiritual beings.
And someone watching us tonight is probably wondering, is there a difference between isithunywa and an ancestor?
Yes, it's a very, very deep one. But there is. Isithunywa, I have, in the book that I wrote, I talk about the upward theory and the downward theory. When you talk about an ancestor Idlozi, you are talking about humans who lived and departed, and they are in the spiritual world. When you talk about isithunywa, you are talking about the spiritual guide. In fact, to make it more clearer for others, in those who are in religion, they will even refer to what you term as an archangel. Isithunywa, the reason why you say isithunywa, it's a messenger sent by who? By the Creator. So isithunywa is more closer to the Creator, and then Idlozi, or your ancestor, it's a human spirit that has departed.
Now, in a time of modernization, because I'm sure this always, is a debate you are aware of, that, there's modernization now and there's a whole lot that gets thrown into the mix, by some saying that it's African spirituality. How do you begin to preserve it in its truest form to ensure that as the times go by, it doesn't lose its essence?
I think to answer your question direct, it's that, unfortunately, I think we Africans, we compromise a lot. If you look, I travel the world, we compromise a lot. And how do we keep our spirituality authentic? It's understanding that our spirituality forms the main identity of us. Our main identity is not formed by our culture and traditions, which evolve. They are formed by our spirituality. And therefore, in order for us, as the world becomes modernized, it's simply for us to understand who we are, spiritually speaking, and our identity, and keep to that. We will move with the world. We will be modern. We will do everything. But we don't have to compromise our spiritual identity.
Are we compromising in your view because we simply don't know what we need to be doing, or are we compromising because the identity to begin with was also tempered with?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we must remember where we come from. We have to remember why we are where we are, because of your colonization, obviously, and South Africa were bonused by apartheid. All of that tempered with. And then now, the important thing is for us to retrace who we are and where we are. But I think what is happening and reasons why we are compromising is that after these events, your colonizations and your apartheid, we did not look back to trace our steps back to say, who were we before these? We just simply moved on with the world. And unfortunately, of course, we have taken a lot of your Eurocentric cultures, etc., etc. So we have compromised. And the only solution is to retrace our steps back in order to fix this.
What are the dangers then if this position of compromise continues into the future?
It's any nation that loses its identity. It's a nation that does not know where it is going. It takes anything from anywhere. And the dangers of that is that in future, our children will no longer be actually Africans. They will, yes, they will have black skins. They might speak a bit of the language, but they will no longer be Africans. And if we lose our Africanness, we lose our position in the world. Because first, before we can embrace everybody else, we need to know who we are and stand or rooted in who we are. We lose that, we no longer who we are. We've lost our position in the world. We will move with everything that comes.
Interesting. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And of course, this is a conversation that I'm sure is still going to resonate with a lot of our viewers, and as they continue then to speak to us about how they were celebrating their own Heritage Day. But thank you so much for talking to us. That was the founder and leader of the Revelation Spiritual Home, Imboni, Dr. UzwiLezwe Radebe.